Right? It's released.
Really, is that what they do?
Yeah, there's so many.
Yes, I think
Six o'clock, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Welcome, everybody. This is the Lee, New Hampshire, 24th of January. Wow, here we go, 24th of January Select Board meeting. Welcome, everybody. I want to start by going into a public hearing relative to the racetrack. Let me make it clear that the board has already approved the schedule for the racetrack. In doing so, we did not put it up for public or accept public comment. So this is for any public comment you may have relative to the racetrack. Please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. You come to the podium. You look at the select board. Give us your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes. Anybody? In that case, I'm going to move on to item number 3, which is also public comment. But not
close it.
But not relative to racetrack issues. If anybody has a public comment?
We close the.
I'm sorry?
We should close the original.
Oh, okay, yes, we can close the original public hearing. My mistake. All right. Do we need to motion that? No, just close it. Okay, fine. Here we go. Any other public comment? In that case, I'm gonna move to Dr. Jim Moore, Superintendent, Oyster River School.
Thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
See.
I'll give you mine when you're done. Okay, thank you. Then I'll give it to you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the select board. I thought I would open up tonight to talk about, the elephant in the room, which is COVID. The pandemic has had a pretty dramatic impact on the school system. And I guess the first thing I would want to say about the pandemic is that every decision that I make or my staff makes related to mitigation efforts per COVID is really based on trying to protect our students. We care immensely about the 2,100 students we have. We care about our 400 plus staff members. And there's a distinction between what we make as decisions when we're talking about our own families and decisions I have to make when I'm talking about all of your families. And the distinction is how do I protect the most students and staff, and what ways can I do that? So the district has a pretty comprehensive multi-tiered mitigation effort that includes masks, and I noticed that, in your signs, public meetings, people are required to wear masks. So in school, all of our students are required to wear masks. All of our staff are required to wear masks. When the students are outdoors, they can take their masks off. When the staff is in the classroom by themselves, they can take their masks off. But when students and staff are mingling together, everybody is masked. We also decided early on that when our students were eating, 3-foot distancing wasn't enough, and we went to 6-foot distancing. This had a dramatic impact on the Massway School in particular, and the high school, because 6-foot distancing means we have to use our gymnasium for lunch. And so we have to shut down PE during that period, and cold weather like this, and nice weather like we've had all the way through really the end of November, our kids were able to go outside, so it had less of an impact. The high school with 860 kids couldn't fit their students in the cafeteria all at once, and so we had to go to 4 lunches. And 4 lunches is a lot of lunches that impact the school day. In addition to that, we have instituted probably the same that you have, making sure things are cleaned thoroughly, our buses are cleaned thoroughly between runs, and so forth. And then we did some things other school systems didn't do. And part of that is, again, to increase the chance that we can keep our schools open. And one of those things is called Sas Testing, where we're doing large group testing, totally voluntary by parents. At this point, we're testing over 600 students a week, and the UNH is our partner in that. We also decided that we would institute individual testing for students or staff who could not get into a testing center. There have been times during this fall and winter where the lines were enormous to get tested. And we were losing kids to quarantine because they needed to be tested. And our school nurses stepped up and they provided the testing in critical cases. While I'm on the school nurses, Catherine Moore here, who's been, the school nurse at Massway, seems like forever, don't tell her I said that, as well as the school nurses across the system, have been nothing short than superhuman in dealing with the COVID crisis. I cannot praise them more highly, and in fact, when you get our annual report, I actually list them by name, which is something I don't typically do because so many people in the district do such a good job that when you single somebody out, you are not singling others, and noses get out of joint sometimes. No noses will be out of joint for the recognition of our nurses. They have really been superhuman. So as a school system, when you make these kind of decisions, sometimes people agree with you, and sometimes people don't. But I just wanted the select board to know that even when people disagree with me, I'm not disagreeable. I listen, I understand where they're coming from. I hope that they understand where I'm coming from. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the bottom line is, every single decision I make is on behalf of your children and our faculty, our staff. And I am very proud of the efforts the school system has done in relation to COVID. I wish we could do more, but we're literally only human. And we're one small cog in a very big pandemic, and we try to do our very best. So that's my message on COVID. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the select board have related to our intervention efforts.
What's your protocol when you find somebody that is got COVID?
So that's a really great question, Scott. Thanks for asking it. We're very clear to our parents not to send children in who are sick. If a child is sick and the parent could firmly believe it's a cold, it's a flu, it's this, it's that, an allergy, but bottom line is we don't know. So when a parent takes it upon themselves to send a sick child to school, we call the parent and ask them to come and get the child. They are quarantined in the schoolhouse until the parent can come and get them. So they're immediately sent home. On the other hand, if a parent on Sunday thinks that their child has symptoms of COVID and they contact our school and leave a message on our school nurse's machine, they will get a call back. And the question that the nurse will ask is, have you been able to get in? The parent can plead their case, I haven't been able to get in. Well, okay, let me test your child. Come in at 10:30, I'll meet you in the parking lot of Massway, and we'll do a quick test. If that proves negative, then the child can come to school. The other mitigation that we just implemented was home testing. So the home test kits now will be accepted by the school system. The parent just needs to take a picture of the test with the child's name next to it to indicate that the result was negative. And so that's new as of literally this week. And of course, we followed the DHHS recommendations of 10 days to 5 days, understanding that the 10 days, the second 5 days is masked. Well, for our school system, that's easy because everybody's masked. 20 days to 10 days also was a change. We implemented that change. And so our nurses are the final arbiter of, whether somebody is ready to come to school or not. So our nurses called a lot of people who were in quarantine this week and brought them back to school because we changed our rules to align with DHHS. Any other questions?
Can I ask something else? I don't want to monopolize.
I am here for you guys.
Oh, my goodness. One of the things that you shared with me, I think, whenever we had breakfast 2 years ago, whatever it was,
2 years ago.
one of the things you were talking about is in terms of the burnout that your staff are having. And I was on a Zoom with Brian, and he kind of said kind of the same thing. What is the district doing to assist those particular staff people and or students in terms of assisting them with that? Because many times people are saying, okay, I had enough, I'm retiring, get me the heck out of here. What is the school district doing about those kind of issues?
Sure. So we have a very specific plan for the children. And so we have what's called the social emotional learning plan. Children who are struggling with COVID, they go to see their counselor. If a child is struggling to the point where they are anxious and don't want to come to school, we build plans around that with the parent. So I think we're pretty good there. I mean, we're in a pandemic, so we can never be perfect. At the adult level, it's much harder, Scott, because like when we talk about my nurses, the reason I'm praising them so much is they literally are working into the evening. They're working on Saturdays and Sundays. They're taking calls from adult staff and so forth. So the board, just when I instituted the new rules related to COVID, I included the hiring of another LPN just for the remainder of this year to try to take a little bit of pressure off them. In terms of teaching staff, our teaching staff are struggling mostly with the transition from remote to full school again. And when I opened school, I shared with the teaching staff that it's going to be a difficult year in the sense that kids have to get used to school again. So they've been out of school, some kids were out of school for almost 2 years. Because if their parent decided to hold them back, even when we went in, then they've been out for almost 2 years. So we have particular grades. Second grade would be a good example. They would have been kindergarten kids when the governor sent us all home. And so we're giving extra special attention to that grade. And our transition grades, normally 5th grade is a transition grade, so we consider 5th and 6th grade transition grades. And 9th and 10th grade transition grades. So essentially what we're experiencing is 5th and 6th grade really is 5th grade in terms of behavior and getting kids used to school again. And 9th and 10th grade is really just 9th grade in terms of getting kids back to being used to being in school. So there's a lot to that. Kids have routines, they know their buildings. I mean, when you look at a junior in high school, the building is not a strange thing to them. When we opened school this year, a junior in high school, the building was strange to them. So we did a lot of work around that. We ask our staff to do self-care, hard to do in a pandemic because they're so dedicated. And I'll show you some of the results of our staff's effort here as I go through this budget presentation. But I couldn't be prouder of a group of employees that I have been during this pandemic, of our teaching staff, our support staff, our bus drivers, our nurses, our tech staff, just goes on and on. People really picked it up. Okay, to switch.
I would just like to really quickly say that I very much appreciate the SAS program. It's been a lifesaver for our family because it allows us to know for sure that everyone's okay and to make choices. We would be able to make a choice much faster if we needed to do so.
Well, thank you. When we started that program, it started out with just a little over 300 students participating, and so it's doubled in the time that we've had it. So it's been a real asset to parents. No fretting. There's the results.
One worry.
Yeah.
That week you don't have to wear.
Switch.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so we talked about the budget. The big news is the project that Scott helped me develop. He was on the committee. He spent 2 years with me thinking through this project, along with Brian Cisneros, a board member, and many others. The new middle school opens on February 28th. Very, very exciting news. It's a student opening, not an official opening. By that I mean the students will move from the old building to the new building on February 28th. And then a month later, they'll tear down the old building. So for our audience, if anybody has any history with Oyster River Middle School, we do have 2 evenings and a weekend set aside for people who want to say goodbye to the old building. So if you want to share that, we'll get the dates out to Andy and we can get them out to the community. That would be terrific. So the grand opening for the middle school is when the fields are done. So the field can't be done until the old building is taken down, so that'll be August. So that'll be the place where I hope that the select boards of the 2 towns and the council and Durham can come and celebrate the opening, and looking forward to that. But I'll tell you where I'll be on February 28th. In that building, watching kids pour into it, and finally seeing this building light up with the joy of children. And I'm telling you, they're going to be so excited. So just to go back and talk a little bit about the building itself, our goal was to make this building net positive. Sustainability was a major part of this building. Our goal is to make it net neutral. It's actually net positive. It's going to generate more power than it uses. And you say, well, then that's great, we'll sell it to the grid. Well, what we did was we worked with Revision Energy. They found investors, so there was no cost to the solar array for the taxpayers. And in 5 years, we'll buy that interest back. And at that point, we will sell the energy back to the grid. And the estimate is that we'll save taxpayers over $2 million over a 20-year period by doing that. So to give you a sense of how energy efficient this building is going to be, we anticipate it will be a LEED certified building at the gold level. So that gives you another sense of how energy efficient it is. And then right now, we're actually using the bus drop-off. We copied Massway, and we cut into co-drive so we could pull the buses off the main drag. That was incredibly important to us because in the old school, buses and cars and kids were all mixing together. So we've already separated the bus traffic, and we've already separated the parent traffic. When we open the school, we'll have a new road for parents to bring their kids down to the school. And so we achieve the safety and wellness part of our goal. And of course, academically, everybody would expect the building to be academically sufficient, and indeed it is. The current building, 45% of the classes were substandard. Obviously, in a new building, 100% of them will be at standard. So pretty excited by that. Just some pictures there for you to see. Something that's really super impressive for, I'll just hold this up for the audience. This is just a lousy picture of a very beautiful room. The new music hall holds 900 children or attendees. State-of-the-art LED projected screen, just absolutely gorgeous space. I'm super excited by that for the students. About 800 plus of our students take music, so this space is going to be treasured and used by our students. A beautiful gym that we're pretty excited by. High school size gym, so we can use this building to take the pressure off the high school so kids can come down here and practice. Just want you to notice those footprints on the wall were painted by me, the architect, the construction engineer. We spent a Saturday doing that. So even after I retire, there'll be a piece of me in the district. So those are some of the highlights. I hope that all of you can stop by. And I know that Carrie has, I know that Kickton has, and I know that Scott has. And Andy, if you want to come over at any time, I'd be glad to give you a personalized tour so you can see what the taxpayers bought. Pretty impressive.
Appreciate that, and I would also thank you from our Department of Public Works Director Bullock. I know he was pleased to be able to bring one of our roll-off storage containers over to the new site to collect cardboard, as we have a cardboard baler and an active market for that. So that's a plus.
It's a good indication of the partnership the school system and the towns have had. Because once we learned you wanted cardboard, we had a ton to give you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me, sir. Harper, have you considered selling bricks from the school that's torn down? We have a lot of students came through here in the area. I wonder
As a fundraiser,
if a brick at $1 a piece
Yeah.
with the year on it.
I think it'll be a great idea. We've raised that issue several times.
Good.
So I think that would be wonderful. So just in terms of budget, getting back down to why I'm here, thought I would just do some of the district highlights so you know what you're paying for as taxpayers. When we did our PSA, so this goes back to the whole issue of how hard our staff has worked. So in terms of academics, across the country, everybody expected that academics would falter as COVID continued because of remote learning, because of the anxiety that's produced by the pandemic. I'm here to share with you that in Oyster River, that did not happen. And in fact, our PSAT scores this fall were the highest we've ever had, which I think goes back to the credit I want to give the teaching staff. When we were struggling with COVID, just like everybody else was at the beginning, we were floundering as to what all this meant, and we were kind of overwhelmed just like everybody else was. And when we hit the summer, we said, this can't continue like this. We need a plan. And we spent the summer really identifying the important parts of our curriculum that kids had to learn despite the pandemic. And our administrators and teachers did a great job of identifying what was important. And as a result, you're going to see some pretty amazing test scores for the district. Our SAT scores are an aggregate of 1570, one of the highest in the state. Our math scores, 67% proficient, one of the highest in the state. Our college placement rate was 86% for a public school. That is amazing. Just want to point out one piece of data that did surprise me, and that is in COVID, 9% of our kids chose military as an option. That number is usually about 4 or 5%, so it doubled. I don't know what caused that, but I thought, that's an interesting piece of data. Our high school graduation rate is 99.5%, and our middle school, as I talked about, it's over 90% complete. And the work that we've been doing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, really watching out for marginalized student populations, including race and sexuality and I'm going to miss it now. Just the work we're doing in that area is really at the forefront of the state, and I'm very proud of it. So I gave you several charts, and they look very, very pretty, and they have bars on them and all of that. The point of these charts is to show you that when we do our internal assessment using the STAR assessment, we expect them to follow this pattern: dark blue, orange, and gray. When we did so dark blue would be the fall, orange would be around now, and then gray would be in the spring. When we opened up the school year, this kind of validated the PSAT scores. Our opening bar is higher than our closing bar from last year, and that's never happened to us before as well. So, as I'm talking to our school board, one of the things I learned from Tom Newkirk is it can't be all, sugar and spice and everything's nice. So what does this data tell us? Well, it tells us globally we're doing good. But when you peel back that top layer, you have things like the second grade that needed a lot of intervention. And so we created the multi-tiered systems of support in the district so we could identify where those spots were or who those children were. So getting right down to the child. So we have work to do. We're not perfect. We are a human organization after all, and no matter how good you are, you can always do better. And so I am very proud of the test scores, but we're not sitting on our laurels. We're looking for how we can help the children who aren't part of that aggregate, and that's really our mission. Now we can talk about the budget. Almost. One of the things that you always ask me about is where we are in terms of our projected enrollment. Our projected enrollment, our actual enrollment was 2,062 kids this year. The Massway and Moherman elementary schools are actually relatively stable. The high school is relatively stable. What we're seeing is a dip in the middle school. When we look beyond 5 years, we see the dip come back. But for right now, we'll see a little bit of a decline in the middle school. But overall, I expect that we'll be a 2,000 plus school system for the next 5 years. In terms of interest to you specifically, how are you comparing to the other towns? Your enrollment on October 1st for Lee was 671 children K through 12, compared to 920 for Durham and 335 for Madbury. We had 180 kids who tuitioned in, mostly at the high school, almost always at the high school. And that's where we get our number for the school year. So that number becomes important because it's part of the equation for sharing the cost of the cooperative school district. The board had a goal this year of an unusually high goal of 4.1%. And the reason that the goal was as high as it was is because inflation was at 7%. And I'm going to give you an example when we talk about the tennis courts of what kind of impact inflation has had. The board also reached into its emergency funds in order to help offset the cost of the budget. So they chose to use $400,000 from the expendable trust fund and $500,000 from the emergency fund to lower the impact on the towns. So I gave you this little slide in relation to the tennis courts. And we took the tennis courts out just before we started construction of the new middle school. They were a disaster. They needed to be replaced. And at that point, we thought the cost of replacing them, the estimate we had was about $290,000. So our goal was to replace them this summer because the new middle school is done. We don't need that parking area anymore, and we would bring in 4 courts. They're going to cost us over $500,000, and that's construction cost inflation. If we built the new middle school today as opposed to when we started, it would have cost us about $15 million more. So inflation for construction cost has gone through the roof, and you probably have discovered that as you've tried to price out some of your capital projects. So that's the biggest capital project we have. In terms of what caused our increases, our health insurance cost is up 4.5% at $255,000. We're in the 3rd year next year of our guild agreement, and that's $730,000 a union. Our custodians, and they ended up with an $86,981 warrant, and our paraeducators at $183,009. And then the new cost for the middle school is $280,046. To give you a sense of that, when Scott and I were first working on the project, I estimated for the committee that we'd be paying about 5% interest on the new school, because that's what we paid for the high school. Turned out to be just 2%. It was astronomically great rates. And splitting the bond over 2 sessions actually was a major advantage to us. So all of that worked out extremely well. When we were doing the estimates for this school, it was well over $1 million a year. And you can see that we're at $280,000 new dollars. So by the time the middle school is at full payment, it'll have very little impact on the tax. What we're trying to do is avoid the spikes and valleys of construction, and we did. In terms of new positions in this budget, we have a tutor at the middle school for those struggling kids, a tutor at the high school, and we added a math science position for the elementary to help with those kids who are struggling. And then the new coordinating position we added was one on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And that's because after 5 years of doing this work, we really needed someone to do the training in the district, to provide the professional development for our staff who are a specialist in this area. Up to this point, it's been myself and my assistant superintendent really carrying this water, and we're committed, but we don't have the expertise that we really need to bring this to fruition across the district. I gave you a slide that shows you the past budget increases, and I did say this one was a little higher than usual, but it's not the highest one in the last 10 years. You can see that was in 2017-18. We've ranged anywhere from 0.35% to 4.41%, and the what's really driving our budget this year is inflation. The budget impact with the contracts is $50,938,265. The nutrition program adds $824,000 non-tax dollars, and then we bring in grants for $641,000. So the total budget, including nutrition and grants, is $52,403,315. So Scott, now is the time you pull out your napkin.
No, I don't have any.
Actually, I've got good news for both Lee and Medbury this year. That all those numbers have had a pretty modest impact on our two smallest cooperative numbers. Largely because we threw the $900,000 from our emergency funds in. The total impact at this point in the year is 16 cents. You all know that that's going to be less. Remember last year when I visited, we thought the impact was going to be $2 and it's less than $1. So what's missing is a new assessed value from the town, which we won't get for months and months and months. And what the state is putting in to the education fund, we don't know that. So both of those things likely would have an impact of lowering that 16 cents even further. So it actually is it's one of the best budgets we presented in Lee for a number of years. The two small towns have taken it on the chin for probably the last three budgets. And this is the first time that Durham actually had the largest increase. And you can see that they're at 85 cents. So I actually expect those will be lower, so that's good news. The default budget, if the budget failed, would be $411,783 less. Article 3 is the all-in article, and then Article 4 is the warrant article on the contracts for, as soon as I see it, the custodians. Article 5 is the warrant article for the paraeducators. And then going back to the solar array, the board is asking permission of the voters to take $125,000 from unexpended balances and put that aside, so in 5 years, the district can buy that solar array, and we'll be done with Revision Energy in terms of that investment. So the next important date is February 8th, deliberative session at the high school auditorium at 7 p.m. with a snow date of February 9th. And then voting on the budget, which in Durham will happen from 7 to 7 p.m. at the high school, in Lee here at the safety complex from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then at Madbury at their town hall from 11 to 7 p.m. That does it, guys. What can I answer for you?
You want to go first?
I have questions, but go ahead.
I have a few.
Yep.
First of all, I'm curious as to the decision around going ahead with the tennis court when the expenses are so high right now,
Yeah.
knowing that, I understand some things don't come down once they go up,
Yeah.
but that things will level out down in the future. Is it because there's things you're planning later, or what is the?
Yeah, the reality is if we wait, that number is only going to go up. In construction, I don't anticipate costs will go down. Once a certain, so say those costs diminished over the next couple of years, I totally expect after the beating that construction companies have had throughout COVID, they just keep it at that level in order to create a bigger profit after they've taken such a beating over the last 3 years. So it's pay now or pay later, and when we pay later, we can see what happened in just it was literally 2.5 years, went from 290 to over 500. The other piece of that is that we had made a commitment to the parents and students that we would replace those tennis courts. And so as the board deliberated, we really felt that we needed to keep our verbal obligation, which was we would do it now.
Got it. We just had the same challenge with our tennis courts and have decided to wait, so I was curious about that. I also was interested, I wanted to thank you for adding the DEI
Oh, thank you.
representative. I know in the town of Lee, we have over 8% of our population is people from different ethnic and racial backgrounds, and I'm really excited they'll be represented in the school. I am wondering about the custodians. You're adding 2 custodians.
Yeah.
And one thing that I have been told is that when you move into a newer building, it actually takes much less cleaning than an older building because you're not dealing with the constant repair and the wear and tear and the dust. What is the reasoning behind the extra
Sure,
2?
the new building is about 30,000 square feet bigger than the
Bigger.
old building. So the music hall and the learning commons alone add an astronomical amount of square footage. And in order to keep the buildings as clean as you experience them, we need to have the custodial staff that does that. When I first came in, Kitron, the buildings were nasty. You know, I don't know whether Carrie remembers this or Scott, but we didn't have the same commitment to excellence that we have now. And we actually had this conversation at the board level, and, you know, can we get away with 1? And my answer to that is, yes, you can get away with 0 if you want to, but if you want to maintain these buildings at the level that taxpayers walk in and they say, wow, these buildings are well taken care of, then we needed the 2. I firmly believe that when people walk into a building, they make a judgment on how well the school system is running. And having a clean schoolhouse means a lot. I think when we have people come in the evenings to use our facilities, we have guests use our facilities, we have the town use our facilities. We want our facilities to say, hey, this is my money is being invested here, and it's being invested well. So it's a philosophy thing as much as a practical thing.
Yep. And I have one more quick observation. One of the things I realized is that in building this, you actually didn't start off with an architect. You started off with a construction
I
manager.
did indeed.
Locked into a price.
Yep.
And then went forward.
That's right.
One thing that we've done a lot in this town is spent a lot of money in architecture that we never actually built. And I just wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit more about that, just because I think this is a really interesting, different way to do things.
Well, I've been a superintendent for 31 years and an educator for 46. So, you know, the light is on at the end of the tunnel for me, and I'll be 70 in 2 years. So that'll be the end of my tenure here. And one of the things I learned in 3 decades of leadership is if you start with the dreamers, it's much harder to pull the dream back. And architects are very creative, and I love them to pieces, but they will build you the Taj Mahal and then tell you exactly how much it's going to cost, which is probably way beyond what anybody envisioned. So we had done work with Bowen Construction. They did our sports fields. They actually did the classrooms on Massway. They did the extension on Mulhermit. And so we had a lot of history with them. And in every project, it was a guaranteed maximum price. And in every project, they ended up with a balance that we could reinvest in that project in a way that we weren't anticipating. That same thing is happening in the new middle school. So by hiring a quality outfit like Bowen, they have lots of experience with architects. If the architect comes in and says, you know, you could put down this tile, what Andre said is, well, you can do something very similar for half the price. So the contractor in this case is going to be somebody you trust immensely, and I do with Bowen and Andre Klotz, who owns it. And I will tell you that in this project, this middle school project, it became their baby. If they could save us money here so we could put it over here, they did. You know, and it's as a result, we didn't think we had any playground money. Last Wednesday, I told the board we had playground money. Because he saved it in other parts of the building. And you'd say, well, you know, what's the building look like? It's stunning. It's truly stunning. But he was smart, he was savvy, and he knew how to spend the taxpayers' money. Bottom line, he was motivated to do that because if he passed the guaranteed maximum price, guess where it came from? His pocket. And so he was very conservative with our money. And now that he's gotten so far in the project, he can turn around and say, you know, we have an unexpended balance right now that you can reinvest in this building of $300,000. In the middle, and the playground, we thought we'd have to fundraise every part of it. We'll still fundraise, but now we have, you know, the money to move forward in a way that we can. guarantee the playground will be there in the spring when the kids come, so.
Very different way to.
Yeah, it is a different way of thinking, but you gotta choose wisely on a contractor, and fortunately, we had a lot of history with this particular one, and,
It's great.
you know, he's who I turn to, you know, when I have a question, you know, I respect our architect, I don't want that to get out of the room as if I don't, but I totally trust our contractor. And there's a difference between respect and trust, and the architect did a great job of taking all of our ideas and creating this building that we're all going to enjoy for decades. But Andre is the one who made it happen. So it is, our architect was really surprised that we already had a builder.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
Any questions?
Well, if you don't mind, I want to share a story with you. I don't think I've said this before. When I went on my first tour of the building, I got there and I didn't know where to park, but I found a place to park, and I walked up the hill, and there wasn't anybody around, but there was a couple of young ladies there, obviously students, that just saw me kind of stumbling, what was going on, and they came to me and said, "Can we help you with something?" And I said, "Yes, I'm going on this tour of the new school, and I'm supposed to meet somebody." And they said, "Well, just go up here," and they gave me directions on how to get in. I got to the main building. I was able to do that. I went through the doors, and I started looking around, and another young lady came out and said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Well, yes, I'm supposed to go on a tour, but nobody told me where to go. So I'm waiting." She said, "Oh, no problem. Just relax right here, and I'll take care of you." And when she left, I looked around the lobby, and they had projects out there. Now, I went to school in New Jersey, which I can tell you, in East Orange, New Jersey, it wasn't a very friendly place. But everybody that came through that area smiled, said hello, and I'm talking about students now. I'm talking about students, and asked if they could help. And I was just dumbfounded also just by some of the neat projects they had going on. So, you know, when I left, I was so impressed with just how those students were smiling and nice to me, and, you know, that would never happen in New Jersey. It's just not to be. And I thought to myself, I said, you know, this is what this school, I mean, that's what it's about. It's just the environment that's there with the children. And one of the things that really struck me, our library in the New Jersey school wasn't anything fantastic. These two young men walked in, and the librarian, who was a male, came up to them and asked them, you know, what are you looking for? What would you like? And he showed them where the books are that they wanted. I mean, it just has a whole different environment than anything I'd ever seen in my life in a school. Honestly, I was just so impressed. Obviously, you're impressed when you take the tour of the new school. I mean, you're in awe of how fantastic this is. To go on just for a short subject, is there ever any talk about incorporating some trades into the school system?
Yeah, it's a really tough conversation, Carrie, that, you know, the state of New Hampshire really isn't interested in that conversation with Oyster River because Dover is so close. We also, Somersworth and Rochester also have CTE programs, trade programs. And so the state sees them as regional programs. I truly feel it's one of the biggest missing elements in Oyster River. We have a sampling of it in the middle school, and we have a sampling of it at the high school. But I'm jealous of the high schools that have CTE centers because the trades have so much to offer. Mm-hmm. And for us, it's hard to convince kids to go over to Dover, Somersworth, and Rochester for their CTE program. We have 70 kids involved in those programs, and 50 of them are in Dover. That makes sense. The other 20 scatter between the other two programs. But the state is not interested in another regional program because it wouldn't be regional, our kids would stay with us. And so they're just not really warm to that idea. It's really sad, but it's true.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for sharing that story about the children, Carrie. I have to say, as I said before, so this is my 10th year here, and one of the things that I noticed the first week I saw the kids, tremendously nice kids. They really are wonderful, wonderful children. So polite, so engaged, so interested in their learning. And so my experience 10 years ago was very similar to yours.
Good, and it's great.
Can you, or maybe Brian, I don't know, whoever's better at explaining, but what is it, last year, we had a significant hit in terms of the state funding that we got in terms of this district. How did that change this year?
Well, you took the hit last year, so there was no hit to take this year.
So it's
So
just
once they
not-
took it away, that's why you're seeing the impact you're seeing now is 16 cents, because that was the rug being pulled out from under you.
Mhm.
Always be wary when the state gives you one-time money,
Mm.
because one-time money, they mean it. Yeah, so it hurt Lee the most.
Okay. Anything from the state in terms of going forward, in terms of,
No, I don't think so. I think the state has been, relatively conservative in their funding for education. I think that they've been short-sighted when it comes to public education. We have a commissioner who promotes other options, and that hurts funding for public schools. So I don't think we're in a good stead with the current legislature in terms of more funding for public education.
okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. It's nice seeing you all. It's nice meeting you, Andy.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on with Mr. Andy Robertson, Town Administrator.
Okay, one of the first things I had on the agenda for this evening was the Zoom policy, and I think as the board is aware, we have reactivated the town Zoom licenses. I've had a fair amount of interest. We've had 3 or 4 meetings in the last couple of weeks. I've had some questions. I've also seen some agendas that were not correct. There is state policy about how you have to agendize meetings. I've explained quite a few people why you still have to have a physical location, that sort of thing. And I thought it would be a good idea to have a specific Zoom meeting policy, or maybe I should change it to social media policy, but it is going to be Zoom for the most part. So I put together what went out with the agenda in hopes that the board might agree to that. Just so I could have
Sounds good to me.
a policy on the books that I could give to people.
You take questions?
Absolutely, this is a draft form, so.
And I know you kind of, well, I don't want to say kind of, but you do talk about it, but in terms of requirements for remote meetings and public meetings, can you maybe put that in here? So they don't have to necessarily go looking for it?
I certainly can.
The whole idea that a quorum has to be in attendance, the people that are doing remote have to be, the quorum has to allow them to do that. Because those are pertinent things, and if you don't tell them, they might not do it.
Yep, I can certainly do that. I have the New Hampshire Municipal Association's white paper on that, and I can probably pare that down so I don't have to use the full page from their white paper, which is very explicit about the requirements for posting and meeting.
Do we have any flexibility on the definition of quorum? Because I know it's used differently in different areas. Sometimes it's a third, sometimes it's a half plus one. Do you have any, as a town, ability to adjust any of that?
Ew. I can certainly look into what's required for each entity that we have,
Level
each
of
commission or
fees,
committee
yeah.
or whatever, and put the recommended.
Yeah, if there's any flexibility, just
requirement.
sometimes that can be 1 or 2 more people that can, during a snowstorm or whatever, stay home.
Oh, I can certainly incorporate that as well.
Well, I think we need to do a little, as we move back into this Zoom, that we need to do a little group training on how you Zoom, you know.
And I did include a link to the Zoom
Yeah, you could take it.
startup and training guide in the policy, which can be as simple or as complex as you want. But I think just the two intro, the getting started guide and the basic meeting skills that they have there should be enough for most folks to figure out how to host
I'm gonna
it.
watch those.
Yeah, I think it's more than just, you know, turning on the computer or the first steps. It's the second steps where I can't hear you and, you know, oh, where did he go and how do I get him back, et cetera, et cetera. I think those are some of the things we need to at least give some training to the committees, et cetera, the chairman, I don't know.
Nope, I can certainly make those specific items available, and I'm very familiar with, as a former selectman, I've actually sent somebody in a car to another selectman's house to help them get their computer on.
Get it up and running.
It's pretty Zoom competent at this point, it's been a while.
But no, those are all good suggestions, which I can incorporate and bring back to you.
Great,
Other than that, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
me too.
And I think that it just seems like there's increased interest in using it, and I want to
Yeah.
make sure we're all on the same page and not posting, particularly not posting incorrectly. Next up, I had the budget and the warrants. I think as you're aware, the budget is $4,882. $4,882,913. The default is $4,574,348. I was able to get the warrant and the MS 636 finalized today for posting. I do have to do estimated revenues still, and both the town clerk and Joanne are going to help me with that tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you.
So in terms of that nasty little email I sent you, I don't know if we can just deal with that, like take it out of contingency or something like that, or just overexpend the line, but
Okay,
that
my
amount has to be added.
understanding was that we had found that, and I believe Denise
Did
had
you-
forwarded that. We do have a specific line.
I only sent it to you, I didn't
Oh,
send it.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it hadn't been forwarded. It is indeed in the budget for the $1,600 and some change amount. It's a specific line in the
In the
highway
solid
budget.
waste, solid
The
waste.
solid waste budget.
But that's only one part of it.
Oh,
The other part of it is the 1192, whatever cents. So there's two
Oh,
parts
okay.
of it. So one part got in, the other part didn't.
okay,
The 16 whatever is the closure amount,
yeah,
the 1192 is how many of a cents, that's the operating expense. So it's those two combined need to be in there.
yeah.
So you're missing the, about $1,200.
I guess that's now just,
Well, that's what I'm,
Yeah, I will definitely follow up on that. I
Well,
believe you're right that the
there's
11,
nothing,
the
yeah.
there's nothing you can do
1192 is
now,
missing, so.
but just, we need to be aware of that, and
Yeah.
Steve should be aware of it as well. that-
Yep.
So I think at the moment, we usually have money that's left over, so maybe we just overexpend that particular line, but that needs to be aware, people need to be aware of it, so.
Yeah, well, it's a bottom line budget, so we can certainly overexpend that if we need to, and if we can't come up with $1,192
Then we have
on
bigger
a close to $5 million budget, we've got bigger problems than.
Yeah.
But
Well, I was just going through everything, and I'm like, there was an explicit, I will not say what I said, but that's why I sent the email, so you guys will know
nope,
that.
I appreciate you catching it, and I will indeed let Steve know as well that that is not in his budget. I do indeed have the default budget, the warrant, and the MS 636, which is your operating budget here for signatures.
Great.
There are two copies or three copies? Two copies of each. We'll post one at the location and we'll post one at the town office.
Can we sign each?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be wet signatures, yes.
What signatures? Never heard it called that before.
That means
Well,
that
they
you
will be
stood on it.
No, I got it, that's just new knowledge for me.
That's the new state term from
Oh.
DES and DRA. And please make sure these are wet.
Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh.
Okay.
So name, position, signature.
Yeah.
So your name, position, and your signature.
Oh, okay.
Right up here too.
Yeah. Oh. I didn't even look up there.
I know it's
I saw
hiding,
the arrow down here.
right?
Yeah, that's Denise's fault. She's always making these kinds of mistakes with her arrows. She goes arrow happy.
I love them, it makes it so nice and easy to see, and she's making it so you can see which piece.
Yes, if I did it the other way, you guys yelled at me because they would all be in the same spot.
So Denise, maybe you
You
just
just-
have to realize you're gonna get yelled at, and
Yeah,
you
you're
just maybe stop yelling
You're not
at
gonna
Denise,
win,
would be
so,
great.
you know. Yeah, I think we have to cut down on Denise's sticky arrow
If you
budget.
print these up, I think you just print the names up.
Actually, I think for the most part, we get the arrows from the municipal association. I think you grabbed a bag of them at the conference.
Oh, I
Am I supposed to
see.
use a black pen?
How can you sign there? You can't sign there.
You just need to sign it.
I just realized I grabbed a blue one, I didn't realize it.
Denise might yell at you, but
This is gonna take an hour and a half.
Denise, if you prefer I sign in black, let me know. You just have to put here, up here, name, position, and signature. Oops, sorry, Scott, I went in the wrong line. Just keeping things exciting for you. You sound so sad. I'm sorry about your line.
what? Sorry about my what?
The line, I took the wrong line.
What's the matter?
Nothing,
Oh.
I'm just messing up. Oh, you went down, I gave you the second one down. You went down anyway, all right. See that space in it?
Oh,
But you want two spaces, I get it.
wait, 3? But we only need 2. I only signed up for 2.
One is the default budget and the municipality, this is the warrant and Lee, that's the default budget. So
And
you're
there's
getting
also
two of
the
everything.
636.
You just have to read the top of what you're signing.
I can't read.
Ay, ay, ay.
I went to Oyster River, so I can't read. I actually didn't go to Oyster River. You know where I went. Yeah, Denise's high school and mine were like,
So you must have gone to Charleston? You were about to
Give
mention
Andy a
Claremont.
cookie. He gets a cookie.
Oh.
Yeah, Fall Mountain against Claremont.
For us, it was Hanover, Lebanon. Not good.
I have an insurance acquaintance in Charleston, it's a
Who?
small agency, Andy Jelly.
I don't know. I knew a David Jelly.
David is his brother.
I went to find a David Jelly. He was in my
That's a lot
sister's.
to sign, sorry.
He was in my sister's class.
Maybe doing anything productive right now.
Andy is his older brother
Older brother?
with less hair.
Yeah, we had some names we called David Jelly. You can probably guess some of them. We also had a gentleman named, his last name was Pickle. His name was Bobby Pickle. You can guess what we called him, so.
Thank you. Moving along, after the budget and warrant, most of what I'm working on at this point, well, I'm working on a whole bunch of things at this point, but I'm trying to keep my focus on the PowerPoint presentation and organization for the deliberative session, also completing narratives for the warrant articles, and obviously those might have to be adjusted slightly post-deliberative session. But that's what I'm attempting to focus on. I think, Katrina, you're aware, but I've talked to Alex Taylor from Massway, who is going to handle audio and visual in conjunction with Steve Gagnon from Back Bay. And I know at our organizational meeting that Don Quigley held, there was some discussion about a desire to maybe live stream the meeting and whether that was possible. And Alex contacted me and said that's definitely an option if we want to do it.
Yeah.
Steve has been talking with him about what he needs to make that happen, so.
My question on that is if we're spending extra money to live stream it and it's recorded, and if it's live streamed, you cannot real-time exist with it. Does that extra money make sense if it's going to be available a few hours later? Because
Right.
if it's live streamed, you have a feeling of like, I want to,
I haven't gotten numbers
okay, so
for
let's
the
look at
cost
that.
yet, but that was
Yeah, I don't wanna
exactly
waste
what
money.
we asked Steve and Alex, if this
Okay.
is gonna cost us more.
Okay.
Steve had initially said it would cost us more because he would have to bring in equipment from a
Right.
vendor.
Right,
Alex butted in and said, no, we actually have that equipment
Okay.
at Mass Way, and
Okay,
we could
great.
do it if you wanted to.
great. I'd always prefer to live stream, I'm just, if it's, expense-wise, if it's not going to be utilized. Great.
No, that came from our secondary conversation
Thank
with Mr. Taylor, who has fairly advanced audio and visual equipment, from what I
Perfect.
understand, so.
Nice job, Mass Way.
COVID policy discussion, I have nothing under that. Had a couple of department heads who were interested in possibly making work-related rules regarding COVID exposure a little more stringent in town. And after talking, both Karen Rossi, Steve Bullock, and myself talked, and I got a little bit of legal advice from NHMA, and they suggested that you're really opening up a can of worms when you try to go beyond what DHHS is presently requiring, and recommended that we stay where we were, and both department heads agreed that that made sense, so we dropped that. I don't really have too much under miscellaneous, nothing in particular. If the board has questions they'd like me to answer at this point, I'm happy to.
No, we're fine. Motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Roll call vote, Selectman Bugby,
Yes.
Select Person Casper.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes, motion passes. Any miscellaneous unfinished business that we know of?
Here is the consent
That's a day,
agenda.
wow, look at that.
Huh?
7 o'clock.
Okay, I believe we had a request for non-public this evening.
Right.
Correct.
I'm coming to it.
That's where the time's gonna go.
So, motion to enter into non-public session per New Hampshire RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2A+C, roll call vote required. Selectman Bugby,
Can we have an L?
You can certainly include an L as well.
We talked about an L
Yep.
too.
Mhm.
Yes, I'll second that if you include an L, Mr. Brown.
So it'll be an ACL.
an ACL,
This we don't
Okay.
say.
Only he signed it.
so it's A+C, L, and roll call vote, we'll run it again. Selectman Bugby,
Yes.
Select Person Casper.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes. Motion passed.
Can you just get you to sign right?
Let's take the budget
Do
review.
we vote to seal the minutes?
Okay.
I motion that we seal the minutes.
I move to do the minutes.
I, roll call?
I'll second it. Roll call vote, Selectman Bugby.
Yes.
Select Person Casper.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes.
What is the thing you wanted to talk about? The
I want to talk
presentation.
about lots of stuff.
No, the
No, the presentation, so if, Andy, if you want to do what your magic is, and if I'm going to do it, that would be great.
In
So I can
reference
see it.
to,
Excuse me?
what is the, we're
This is the
referencing?
deliberative.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we'll certainly get that polished up, put together. It's
So-
pretty much there now and get it to you well in advance.
So the other thing is Mr. Brown wants in terms of, can we just, you guys have the warrant and everything? We can just go through who does which one? We can do that now.
Who's doing what to who?
Yeah, he wants to do that.
Who said what to who?
Who's one of who? Who's in the room?
I've never done this before, so we all read them.
Okay,
Take turns if you want.
so warrant Article 1, you don't have to do anything. The
Moderator.
voters are going to do that.
Moderator does that one.
Article 2 is relative to temporary signage.
Karen Rossi.
No, I can read that one.
Absolutely.
Is it
You wanna read
Karen?
that one?
Should she read it? Is she there?
Absolutely right.
It's coming from her
Okay,
department.
great.
She's coming from the planning
So
board.
Karen?
All right, so I'll use Karen for that. Operating budget of the town, are you gonna have the budget committee move it, or do you?
I'll do it.
That's Scott.
Okay,
The other thing we need is the second person. Who's gonna be the second person that closes our discussion? You know, the person that says, I move to not.
Yeah, we need the,
Who wants to do
We need to know who's gonna be the second.
let Katrin do it.
For all of them?
Yep.
Okay, I will second all of them.
No, not second. What you say is your motion to
Oh.
not reconsider this particular article.
Not to read.
Yeah.
All right, I will need those words written because you guys have met me.
Yep.
I have those. ready
Thank
to go.
you. I'll tap you.
Article 4 is the fire equipment capital reserve fund.
I'll do that.
I feel like we're picking them based on our,
The ones you like. and
the ones you like. That's funny.
Article 5 is the town building
You can
capital
have
reserve
that.
fund.
Do you want to have that one? I'll take that one.
Okay. And I would note that we have the actual
Yes.
voting warrant that is not split on pages like
Great,
the state's
thank you.
format is.
The other thing that I would ask you to do is put in what the balances are for each of those
Yes, I
funds.
have.
Yes, we have that.
Okay,
And I have that on the
Thank
PowerPoint
you.
presentation as
okay,
well.
thank you.
Article 6 is the transfer station equipment capital reserve fund.
I'll do that.
7 is the highway department road and bridge fund.
I'll do that.
Good, jump in.
Well, I figure it makes more sense if it's 1, 2, 3, whatever, but okay.
8 is highway equipment capital reserve fund.
I'll do that.
So you're gonna have all the highway transportation.
Mhm.
Got it.
Okay. Lee Library.
That is me, obviously.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Obviously. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
I might speak against that one.
Okay, Article 10, which is the fire ponds and cistern capital reserve fund.
I'll do that.
We should just. let it
Article
take
11
long.
is the contingency fund.
I'll do that
Oh,
one.
yeah, that's a long one. You have that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, thanks.
And Article 12 is the fire pond and cistern change of purpose language.
Okay.
You want to do that one?
Yeah.
All right.
And Article 13 is the modification of the elderly exemption.
I'll do that one. That's because Katrin doesn't like that one.
Good.
Way too many numbers, and I'm
Brings us
dyslexic.
down to Article 14, which is the change in CIP appointment authority.
I would like to do that.
Do that one.
Yeah,
That's all of them.
good.
That way I make everyone angry.
So,
It's just gonna make it
I
easy.
know it's not gonna make anyone angry. They seem happy.
wait, Katrin's gonna do the last one?
Yeah, I have them already.
So just out of curiosity, I mean, sometimes we have Chief Nemeth come up and read the fire department ones
Oh,
and stuff
okay.
like
Should we do that?
But
No, that's
if
a
we're not
great
gonna do
idea.
that, that's fine. Do you want to not have
Now,
Karen do
we'll
number
read,
3
we'll
then?
do the
Because
article, and then if there's questions
No, I
or
like-
something that comes up,
But she
you
has a
know.
good idea. Could Nemeth read all the ones that are for the fire department? That's a great idea. That's less you'd have to do. And Nemeth would be able to present them. I think that's great. Does that make sense? No?
yeah, that's fine.
Or you
That's
thinking
fine.
just don't have Karen do the
Or,
one?
exactly. I
Okay.
was like, I didn't know if you wanted to just stick
Okay.
with you guys and have them all do it.
It's my
or
first
if you
rodeo,
wanted her to
so
do
literally.
that one.
It is your
My
point.
preference would be, let me read
Okay.
the article.
And then he can speak to it.
And if it, you know, somebody stands up and says, what about this, this, and this, I can flag the chief to come up to the microphone. I mean, that's how we've done it.
Then can I read the one for the sign ordinance?
Sure.
For the what?
So we'll read-
Sign ordinance?
For the most
Two.
part, they're all straightforward stuff.
Well, the
Doesn't
thing
like
is,
public speaking anyway.
Oh, well then, if that helps,
yeah,
that's
the
how they
thing
do
is,
it.
also, we're just depositing, we're not spending any money out of any of those, so. I don't think there's gonna be tons of conversation in terms of, well, why do you want to put that money away? So,
Right.
you're
You
buying something,
you
yeah.
never know.
Yes, well, one thing that you probably know, Katrin, is that, you know, we'll sit there and we'll spend $4 million just like that, but then we'll sit there and argue about
Yes.
$1,200 for
Yes.
half an hour.
I
So-
have literally just done that with the budget with you, so literally know that that's how humans work. We get very worried about smaller numbers, we
People come with things that they're concerned about.
Well, makes sense. I remember when tasers didn't pass.
They should come concerned about the school budget.
And the two
Well-
custodians.
Fortunately or unfortunately, we don't deal with that, so.
I was upset about the custodians, I will say publicly, just because one of the things that I've heard is that when we get a newer building, it will save us costs on cleaning, so I was concerned about the idea of it not actually being the case, so. looking for how to save this town money everywhere we can.
30,000 square feet, that's a lot to ask your existing,
But
that's,
it's very clean.
yes, but it won't be clean forever.
But they're currently putting ceiling tiles back up on a daily basis that fall down because they're rotting out of the ceiling. So that's a very
Really?
time-expensive thing, yeah.
Well, they can use some of their $300,000 savings to fix that.
No, it's, the building's getting torn down. That won't be an issue anymore.
Oh, the one in the existing
Yeah,
building?
The
Oh,
existing
okay.
building.
I thought you meant the
No,
new
no, no, the
building.
new building has none of those problems, but currently the custodial staff spends a great deal of time dealing with maintenance issues and cleaning up
They're asking for two.
2 new ones on a brand new building that's clean. Fighting for the
But they're gonna have
town.
800 students in that, it's not gonna stay clean very long, so.
I know, and there's a lot of floor to clean, and flooring cleaning takes a lot of time.
I do like their idea about their single stall bathrooms, I like that.
I love that idea, I was there during that discussion.
That's a good thing.
All right,
Anything else?
we've
Are
chatted
we
enough
done?
tonight.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.